Right, let's see how much of this I can get before the sun goes down. Ooh, we finished part 1. Part 2, illumination. There is so much that glows in the circus, from flames to lanterns to stars. I've heard the expression trick of the light applied to sights within Le Cirque de Rêve so frequently that I sometimes suspect the entirety of the circus itself is a complex illusion of illumination. Aww. Friedrich Thiessen, 1894. Oh, we got another beautiful page of stars. Opening night 1, Inception. Ooh, this is one of my marked passages too. London, October 13th and 14th, 1886. Opening day, or opening night rather, is spectacular. Every last detail is planned, and a massive crowd gathers outside the gates long before sundown. When they are finally allowed to enter, they do so wide-eyed, and as they move from tent to tent, their eyes only get wider. Every element of the circus blends together in a wonderful coalescence. Acts that have been training in separate countries on separate continents now perform in adjacent tents, each part melding seamlessly into a whole. Each costume, each gesture, each sign on each tent is more perfect than the last. The air itself is ideal, clear and crisp and cool, permeated with scents and sounds that entice and enchant one patron after another. At midnight, the bonfire is ceremoniously lit, having spent the earlier part of the evening standing empty, appearing to be a simple sculpture of twisted iron. 12 of the fire performers quietly enter the courtyard with small platforms that they set up along the perimeter like numbers on a clock. Precisely 1 minute before the hour, they ascend their respective platforms and pull from their backs shimmering black bows and arrows. At 30 seconds before midnight, they light the tips of the arrows with small dancing yellow flames. Those in the crowd who had not noticed them before now watch in wonder. At 10 seconds before the hour, they raise their bows and aim the flaming arrows at the waiting well of curling iron. As the clock begins to chime near the gates, the first archer lets his arrow fly, soaring over the crowd and hitting its mark in a shower of sparks. The bonfire ignites in an eruption of yellow flame. Then the second chime follows, and the second archer sends his arrow into the yellow flames, and they become a clear sky blue. A third chime with a third arrow, and the flames are a warm, bright pink. Flames the color of a ripe pumpkin follow the fourth arrow. A fifth, and the flames are a scarlet red. A sixth brings a deeper, sparkling crimson. 7, and the fire is soaked in a color like an incandescent wine. 8, and the flames are shimmering violet. 9, and the violet shifts to indigo. A 10th chime, a 10th arrow, and the bonfire turns the deepest midnight blue. That I want to see. On the penultimate chime, the dancing flames change from blue to black, and for that moment, it is difficult to discern the fire from its cauldron. Damn, okay. And on the final strike, the dark flames are replaced with a blinding white, a shower of sparks falling like snowflakes around it. Huge curls of dense white smoke swirl up into the night sky. The reaction from the crowd is uproarious. The spectators who had been considering taking their leave decide to stay just a little longer and comment enthusiastically about the lighting of the fire. Those who do not witness it themselves hardly believe the stories told minutes or hours later. People roam from tent to tent, wandering down paths that loop over each other, never seeming to end. Some enter each tent they pass, while others are more selective, choosing tents to enter after careful consideration of signs. Some find a particular tent so fascinating that they are unable to exit it, opting instead to stay there the duration of their visit. Patron makes suggestions to other patrons they pass on the concourses, pointing out remarkable tents they have visited already. Their advice is always taken with pleasure, though often the advisees are distracted by other tents before they locate the recommended ones. It's difficult to usher the remaining patrons out as the dawn creeps up, and they are only consoled by assurances that they may return when the sun sets again. All told, opening night is an undeniable success. There is only one minor mishap of sorts, an unexpected occurrence. It passes unnoticed by any of the patrons, and many of the performers are not aware of it until after the fact. Just before sunset, while the last-minute preparations are being made, costumes adjusted, caramel melted, the wife of the wildcat tamer unexpectedly goes into labor. She is, when not in a delicate state, her husband's assistant. Their act has been slightly modified for her absence, but the cats themselves seem agitated. She is expecting twins, though they are not due for a few more weeks. People joke afterward that perhaps they did not want to miss opening night. A doctor is brought to the circus before it opens to the public and escorted discreetly backstage for the delivery, an easier feat to accomplish than moving her to a hospital. 6 minutes before midnight, Winston Aidan Murray is born. 7 minutes after midnight, his sister Penelope Ashlyn Murray follows. It's probably just Murray and not Murray. When the news is relayed to Chandresh Christophe Lefebvre, he is mildly disappointed that the twins are not identical. Buddy, chill. He had thought up various roles in the circus for identical twins to perform once the children were old enough. Fraternal twins, on the other hand, lack the amount of theatricality he had expected, but he has Marco arrange the delivery of 2 enormous bouquets of red roses anyway. They are tiny things, each with a rather surprising amount of bright red hair. They barely cry, staying awake and alert with matching pairs of wide blue eyes. They're wrapped in spare bits of silk and satin, white for her and black for him. A steady stream of circus performers comes to see them in between acts, taking turns holding them and inevitably remarking on their exquisite timing. They will fit right in, everyone says, save for their hair. Someone suggests hats until they're old enough for hair dye. Someone else remarks that it would be a travesty to dye over such a color, a shocking red much brighter than their mother's auburn. It is an auspicious color, Tsukiko comments, but she refuses to elaborate on her meaning. She kisses each twin on the forehead and later makes strings of folded paper cranes to hang above their cradle. Aww. Close to dawn, when the circus is emptying, they're taken for a walk around tents and into the courtyard. The purpose is, ostensibly, to lull them to sleep, but they stay awake, watching the lights and the costumes and the stripes on the tents around them, strangely alert for only being a few hours old. Not until the sun has risen do they finally close their eyes, side by side in the black wrought iron cradle lined with striped blankets that already awaits them despite their early arrival. It was delivered as a gift a few weeks earlier, though it had no card or note. The Murrays assumed it was a gift from Chandresh, though when they thanked him for it, he claimed he had no idea what they were talking about. The twins quite like it, regardless of its dubious origins. No one recalls afterward exactly who it was that dubbed them Poppet and Widget. As with the cradle, no one takes credit for it. But the nicknames stick, as nicknames do. Opening Night 2. Sparks. London, October 13th and 14th, 1886. Marco spends the first several hours of opening night taking surreptitious glances at his watch, waiting impatiently for the hands to reach midnight. The unexpected early arrival of the Murray twins has complicated his schedule already, but if the lighting of the bonfire proceeds as planned, that should be enough. It is the best solution he can come up with, knowing that in a few weeks the circus will be hundreds of miles away, leaving him alone in London. And while Isabel may prove helpful, he needs a stronger tie. Ever since he discovered the venue for the challenge, he has been slowly taking on more responsibility for the circuits, doing all that Chandresh asked of him and more, to the point where he was given free rein with everything from approving the design of the gates to ordering canvas for the tents. It worries him, the scope of the binding. He has never attempted anything on this scale. There seems no good reason not to start off the game as strongly as possible. The bonfire will provide him with a connection to the circus, even though he is not entirely certain how well it will work. And with so many people involved, it seems sensible to add an element of safety to the venue. It has taken months of preparation. Chandresh was more than willing to let him organize the lighting, having already deemed him invaluable to the circus planning with only mild coercion. A wave of a hand and the details were all up to him. And most importantly, Chandresh agreed to let it be a secret. The lighting itself took on the air of a midnight dinner, with no questions permitted as to the ingredients or menu. No answers provided as to what the arrows are tipped with to create such an astounding effect, how the flames are made to shift from one vibrant hue to another. Those who did inquire during preparations and rehearsals were told that to reveal the methods would ruin the effect. Though, of course, Marco has been unable to rehearse the most important part. It's easy for him to slip away from Chandrash in the clouded courtyard just before midnight. He makes his way towards the twisted iron, moving as close as he can to the empty cauldron. He takes a large leather-bound notebook from his coat, a perfect copy of one that has been safely locked in his office. No one in the milling crowd notices as he tosses it into the bottom of the cauldron. It lands with a thud that is muffled by the ambient noise. The cover flips open, exposing the elaborate ink tree to the star-speckled night sky. Aww. He stays close to the edge of the twisted metal while the archers take their places. His attention remains focused on the flames, despite the press of the patrons around him as the fire is amplified through a rainbow of hues. When the last arrow lands, he closes his eyes. The white flames burn red through his eyelids. Celia expected to feel like a poor imitation of her father during the first performances, but to her relief, the experience is vastly different from the one she watched so many times in theater after theater. The space is small and intimate. The audiences are modest enough that they remain individual people rather than blending into an anonymous crowd. That I love. I love that in my work I get to meet individual people. I know that we're really, really busy sometimes, but on the regular days, it's very nice to meet individual people. She finds she is able to make each performance unique, letting the response of the audience inform what she chooses to do next. While she enjoys it more than she thought she would, she's grateful that she has stretches of time to herself in between. As it nears midnight, she decides to see if she can find a place to discreetly watch the lighting of the bonfire. But as she makes her way through the area that's already being referred to as backstage, despite the lack of stage, she's quickly swept up in the somewhat ordered chaos surrounding the impending birth of the Murray twins. Several of the performers and staff have gathered, waiting anxiously. The doctor who has been brought in seems to find the entire situation strange. I wonder why. The contortionist comes and goes. Aidan Murray paces like one of his cats. Celia endeavors to be as helpful as she can, which consists mainly of fetching cups of tea and finding new and creative ways to assure people that everything will be fine. It reminds her so much of consoling her old spiritualist clients that she's surprised when she is thanked by name. The soft cry that sounds minutes before midnight comes as a relief, met by sighs and cheers. Then something else immediately follows. Celia feels it before she hears the applause echoing from the courtyard, the shift that suddenly spreads through the circus like a wave. It courses through her body, sending an involuntary shiver down her spine, almost knocking her off her feet. Are you all right? A voice behind her says, and she turns to find Tsukiko laying a warm hand on her arm to steady her. The too knowing gleam that Celia is beginning to find familiar shines in the contortionist's smiling eyes. I'm fine, thank you, Celia says, struggling to catch her breath. You are a sensitive person, Tsukiko says. It is not unusual for sensitive people to be affected by such events. Another cry echoes from the adjoining chamber, joining the first in a gentle chorus. They have remarkable timing, Tsukiko says, turning her attention to the newborn twins. Celia can only nod. It is a shame you missed the lighting, Tsukiko continues. It was remarkable as well. While the Murray twins' cries subside, Celia tries to shake the feeling that remains tingling over her skin. She's still unsure who her opponent is, but whatever move has just been made, it has rattled her. She feels the entirety of the circus radiating around her as though a net has been thrown over it, trapping everything within the iron fence, fluttering like a butterfly. She wonders how she's supposed to retaliate. Man, it's so interesting to see, like, they have no idea what the other person is doing, and they have such a different kinds of magic that they don't understand each other's magic yet. Ugh, it's so cool. Alright. Opening Night 3. Smoke and Mirrors. London, October 13th and 14th, 1886. Chandresh Christophe Lefebvre enters not a single tent on opening night. Instead, he wanders through pathways and concourses and walks in loops around the courtyard with Marco in tow, who's taking notes whenever Chandrash finds something to comment upon. Chandrash watches the crowd, discerning how people decide which tents to enter. He identifies signage that needs to be adjusted or elevated to be easier to read, doors that are not visible enough, and others that are too predominant, drawing too little attention or too much from a crowd. But these are minute details, really extra oil for inaudible squeaking. It could not be better. The people are delighted. The line for tickets snakes around the outside of the fence. The entire circus glistens with excitement. A few minutes before midnight, Chandrash positions himself by the edge of the courtyard for the lighting of the bonfire. He chooses a spot where he can view both the bonfire and a good portion of the crowd. Everything is ready for the lighting, correct? He asks. No one answers him. He turns to his left and his right, finding only giddy patrons streaming past. Marco? He says, but Marco is nowhere to be found. Okay, it's starting to be a little hard to hold this. Okay, that's better. One of the Burgess sisters spots Chandrash and approaches him, carefully navigating her way through the crowded courtyard. Hello, Chandrash, he says when she reaches him. Is something wrong? I seem to have misplaced Marco, he says. Strange, but nothing to worry about, Lainey dear. Tara, she corrects. I love the fact that he's like, oh, I seem to have misplaced my assistant. I love the turn of phrase to say misplaced about something that's, like, has its own agency. Like, I misplaced a book, that makes sense, but I misplaced my cat. Well, actually, that makes some sense, but then I misplaced a person. Just, I don't know, it sounds very funny to me for some reason. Anyway, you look alike, Chandrash says, puffing on his cigar. It's confusing. You should stay together as a set to avoid such faux pas. Really, Chandrash, we're not even twins. Which of you is older then? That's a secret, Tara says, smiling. May we declare the evening a success yet? So far it is satisfactory, but the night is relatively young, my dear. How is Mrs. Murray? She's doing fine, I believe, though it's been an hour or so since I heard any news. It will make for a memorable birthday for the twins, I should think. They might be useful if they're as indistinguishable as you and your sister. We could put them in matching costumes. You might wait until they could walk, at least. Tara laughs. Around the unlit cauldron that will hold the bonfire, 12 archers are taking their positions. Tara and Chandrash halt their conversation to watch. Tara observes the archers while Chandrash watches the crowd as their attention is drawn to the display. They turn from crowd to audience as though choreographed along with the archers, everything proceeding precisely as planned. The archers let their arrows fly, one by one, sending the flames through a rainbow of conflagration. The entire circus is doused in color as the clock tolls, 12 deep chimes reverberating through the circus. On the 12th knell, the bonfire blazes, white and hot. Everything in the circus shudders for a moment, scarves fluttering despite the lack of any breeze, the fabric of the tents quivering. The audience bursts into applause. Tara claps along, while beside her Chandrash stumbles, dropping his cigar to the ground. I do not remember this happening. Chandrash, are you all right? Tara asks. I feel rather dizzy, he says. Tara takes Chandrash by the arm to steady him, pulling him closer to the side of the nearest tent, out of the way of the crowd that has started moving again, spilling out in all directions. Did you feel that? He asks her. His legs are shaking, and Tara struggles to support him as they are jostled by passerby. Feel what? She asks, but Chandrash does not reply, still clearly unsteady. Why did no one think to put benches in the courtyard? Tara mutters to herself. Is there a problem, Miss Burgess? A voice asks behind her. She turns to find Marco hovering behind her, notebook in hand, and looking quite concerned. Yeah, I should think so. I don't think he expected this to really affect anyone who couldn't tell if magic was going on. So I don't know what happened. I don't know, like, is Chandrash more tied to the circus than the rest of them? I mean, fair, it was kind of his idea. They're beginning to attract stares from the crowd. Marco takes Chandrash's arm and pulls him into a quieter corner, standing with his back to the courtyard to provide a modicum of privacy. Is it modicum? I don't know how to pronounce that word because I've only ever seen it in books and haven't had to say it out loud. Has he been like this long? Marco asks Tara as he steadies Chandrash. No, it came on quite suddenly, she replies. I worry he might faint. I'm sure it's nothing, Marco tells her. The heat, perhaps. I can handle this, Miss Burgess. It's nothing to concern yourself with. Tara furrows her brow, reluctant to leave. It's nothing, Marco repeats emphatically. Chandrash looks at the ground as though he has lost something, not seeming to register the conversation at all. If you insist, Tara relents. He's in perfectly good hands, Miss Burgess, Marco says. And then he turns before she can say another word, and he and Chandrash walk off into the crowd. There you are, Lainey says, appearing at her sister's shoulder. I've been looking everywhere for you. Did you see the lighting? Wasn't it spectacular? Indeed, Tara says, still scanning the crowd. Whatever is the matter? Lainey asks. Did something happen? How much do you know about Chandrash's assistant? Tara asks in response. Marco? Not very much, Lainey says. He's worked for Chandrash for a few years, specializes in accounting. Before that, he was a scholar of some sort, I believe. I'm not entirely sure that what he studied, or where, for that matter. He's not particularly talkative. Why do you ask? Seeking another dark and handsome conquest? Tara laughs, despite her distraction. No, nothing like that. Only curiosity. She takes her sister by the arm. Let us go and seek out other mysteries to explore for the moment. Arm in arm, they navigate the crowd, circling around the glowing bonfire that many patrons are still gazing at, mesmerized by the dancing white flames. Ooh, this is another scene from the circus. The Hanged Man. In this tent suspended high above you, there are people. Acrobats, trapeze artists, aerialists, illuminated by dozens of round glowing lamps hanging from the top of the tent like planets or stars. There are no nets. You watch the performance from this precarious vantage point, directly below the performers with nothing in between. There are girls in feathered costumes who spin at various heights, suspended by ribbons that they can manipulate, marionettes that control their own strings. Normal chairs with legs and backs act as trapezes. Round spheres that resemble bird cages rise and descend while one or more aerialists move from within the sphere to without, standing on the top or hanging from the bars on the bottom. In the center of the tent, there is a man in a tuxedo suspended by one leg that is tied with a silver cord, hands clasped behind his back. He begins to move extremely slowly. His arms reach out from his sides, first one then the other, until they hang below his head. He starts to spin, faster and faster, until he is only a blur at the end of the rope. He stops suddenly, and he falls. The audience dives out of the way below him, clearing a space of bare, hard ground below. You cannot bear to watch. You cannot look away. Then he stops at eye level with the crowd, suspended by a silver rope that now seems endlessly long. Top hat undisturbed on his head, arms calmly by his sides. As the crowd regains its composure, he lifts a gloved hand and removes his hat. Bending at the waist, he takes a dramatic inverted bow. Oneiromancy. Concord, Massachusetts, October 1902. Bailey spends the entire day willing the sun to set, but it defies him and keeps his usual pace across the sky, a pace that Bailey has never really thought about before, but today finds excruciatingly slow. I am so glad we're back to Bailey. I missed him. Okay. It might be time to turn on the lamp. Okay. Ah, there you go. I can see the page again. He almost wishes it were a school day, so he would have something to help pass the hours. He wonders if he should take a nap, but he is far too excited about the sudden appearance at the circus to possibly sleep. Dinner passes the same way it has for months, stretches of silence broken by his mother's attempt at polite conversation and Caroline's occasional sighs. His mother mentions the circus, or more specifically, the influx of people it will bring. Bailey expects the silence to fall again, but instead Caroline turns to him. Didn't we dare you to sneak into the circus the last time it was here, Bailey? Her tone is curious and light, as though she truly does not remember whether or not such a thing occurred. I really don't like Caroline, unsurprisingly. What, during the day? His mother asks. Caroline nods vaguely. Yes, Bailey says quietly, willing the uncomfortable silence to return. Bailey, his mother says, managing to turn his name into a disappointment-laced admonishment.
Bailey is not certain how it is his fault, being the daree and not the darer, but Caroline responds before he can protest. Oh, he didn't do it, she says, as though she now recalls the incident clearly. Bailey only shrugs. Well, I should hope not, his mother says. The silence resumes, and Bailey stares out the window, wondering what exactly constitutes nightfall. He thinks perhaps it would be best to get to the gates as soon as it could even remotely be considered dusk, and wait if necessary. His feet feel itchy beneath the table, and he wonders how soon he will be able to escape. It takes ages to clear the table, an eternity to help his mother with the dishes. Caroline disappears to her room, and his father pulls out the newspaper. Where are you going? That was weird. Where are you going? There you go. His mother asks as he puts on a scarf. I'm going to the circus, Bailey says. Don't be too late. You have work to do. I won't, Bailey says, relieved that she has neglected to specify a time, leaving too late up to interpretation. Take your sister, she adds, only because there is no way to leave the house without his mother watching to see whether or not he stops at Caroline's room. Bailey knocks at the half-closed door. Go away, his sister says. I'm going to the circus if you'd care to join me, Bailey says, his voice dull. He already knows what her answer will be. Nope, she says, as predictable as the dinner-time silence. How childish, she adds, shooting him a disdainful glare. Fuck you, Caroline. Sincerely. Okay. Sorry. Bailey leaves without another word, letting the wind slam the front door behind him. The sun is just beginning to set, and there are more people out than usual at this time of day, all walking in the same direction. As he walks, his excitement begins to wane. Perhaps it is childish. Perhaps it will not be the same. Don't think that! When he reaches the field, there's already a crowd gathered, and he is relieved that there are plenty of patrons his own age or much older, and only a few children with them. A pair of girls around his age giggles as he passes them, trying to catch his eye. He cannot tell if it is meant to be flattering or not. Big mood! Bailey finds a spot to stand within the crowd. He waits, watching the closed iron gates, wondering if the circus will be different than he remembers. And he wonders in the back of his mind if the red-haired girl in white is somewhere inside. The low orange rays from the sun make everything, including the circus, look as though it is aflame before the light disappears completely. It's quicker than Bailey expected, the moment that shifts from fire to twilight, and then the circus lights begin flickering on, all over the tents. The crowd oohs and ahs appropriately, but a few in the front gasp in surprise when the massive sign above the gates begins to sputter and spark. Bailey can't help but smile when it is fully lit, shining like a beacon. Le Cirque de Rêve. While the day of waiting was tediously slow, the line to enter the circus moves remarkably fast, and soon Bailey is standing at the ticket booth, purchasing a single admission. The winding path speckled with stars seems endless as he feels his way through the dark turns, anxiously anticipating the brightness at the end. The first thing he thinks when he reaches the illuminated courtyard is that it smells the same, of smoke and caramel and something else that he cannot place. He is not sure where to start. There are so many tents, so many choices. He thinks perhaps he should walk around a bit first before deciding which tents to enter. He thinks also that by simply wandering the circus, he might improve his chances of happening upon the red-haired girl, though he refuses to admit to himself that he's looking for her. Silly to look for a girl he only met once under extremely strange circumstances several years ago. There's no reason to believe that she'd even remember him or recognize him, and he is not entirely sure he would recognize her either, for that matter. He decides to walk into the circus, through the courtyard with a bonfire and out the other side, and then attempts to work his way back. It is as good a plan as any, and the crowd might not be as thick on the far side. But first he thinks he should get a mulled cider. It does not take him long to find the proper vendor in the courtyard. He pays for his cup, the steamy concoction contained in black and white marbled swirls, and wonders for a moment before his first sip if it won't taste as good as he remembers. He has recalled that taste countless times in his head, and despite the wealth of apples in the area, no cider, with or without spices, has ever tasted as good. He hesitates before taking the tiniest of sips. It tastes even better than he remembers. He picks a path to take, and along it, between the entrances to the surrounding tents, there is a small group gathered around a raised platform. A woman stands on the platform in a fitted costume covered in black and silver swirls. She's twisting and bending in such a way that it seems both horrible and elegant. Bailey stops to join the spectators, even though it is almost painful to watch. The contortionist lifts a small silver metal hoop from the ground, brandishing it with a few simple but impressive movements. She passes it to a man in the crowd, in order to establish that it is solid. When he hands it back to her, she passes her entire body through it. extending her limbs in fluid dance-like motions. After discarding the hoop, she places a small box in the center of the platform. The box looks no more than a foot wide or high, though in reality is slightly larger than that. While the act of a fully grown, if below average sized woman condensing herself into such a confined space would be impressive regardless of the details of the box, it is made even more impressive in this case by the fact this box is made of glass, completely transparent. The edges are metal, oxidized to a blackish tinge, but the side panels and the lid are clear glass, so she is visible the entire time as she bends and twists and folds herself into the tiny space. She does it slowly, making each minute movement part of the show, until her body and head are completely within the box and only her hand remains without, sticking out top. The view from Bailey's perspective looks impossible. A bit of leg here, the curve of a shoulder there, part of her other arm underneath a foot. Only one hand remains. It waves cheerfully before pulling the lid closed. It latches automatically, and the box is undeniably closed, with the contortionist clearly visible inside. Then the glass box and the woman trapped inside slowly fill with white smoke. It curls through the tiny cracks and spaces not occupied by limbs and torso, and seeps between her fingers so they press against the glass. The smoke thickens, obscuring the contortionist completely. There's only white smoke visible inside the box, and it continues to ripple and undulate against the glass. Suddenly, with a popping noise, the box breaks. The glass panels fall to the sides, and the lid collapses downwards. Curls of smoke rise into the night air. The box, or rather, the small pile of glass upon the platform that had once been a box, is empty. The contortionist is gone. The crowd waits for several moments, but nothing happens. The last wisps of smoke dissipate, and the crowd begins to disperse. Bailey takes a closer look as he walks by, wondering if the contortionist is somehow concealed in the platform, but it's solid wood and open underneath. She's vanished completely, despite the plain evidence that there was nowhere for her to go. Bailey continues down the winding path. He finishes his cider and finds a bin to discard his cup, though as soon as he places it within the shadowed container, it seems to vanish. I like that trick. I want that. I want one. He walks on, reading signs, trying to decide which tent to enter. Some are large and decorated with flourishes and long descriptions of their contents. But the one that catches his eye is smaller, as is the tent on which it hangs, looping white letters on a black background. Feats of illustrious illusion. I think I know whose tent that is. The entrance is open, and a line of patrons files into the illusionist's tent. Bailey joins them. Close enough. Inside, it's lit by a line of black iron sconces along the rounded wall and contains nothing but a ring of plain wooden chairs. There are only about 20 of them, in 2 staggered rows so that the view from each seat is comparable. Bailey chooses a seat in the inside row, across from the entrance. The rest of the seats fill quickly, save for 2, one to his immediate left and another across the circle. Bailey notices 2 things at once. First, he can no longer see where the entrance had been. The space where the audience had now entered appears to be a solid wall, seamlessly blending with the rest of the tent. Second, there is now a dark-haired woman in a black coat sitting to his left. He's certain that she was not there before the door disappeared. Then his attention is removed from both these events as the empty chair across the circle bursts into flame. Okay, Celia. The panic is instant. Those occupying the chairs closest to the flaming chair abandon their seats and rush for the door, only to find that there is no longer a door to be found, only a solid wall. That would give me a heart attack. Hopefully, on the night that I was there, she would not start it like that. The flames grow steadily higher, staying close to the chair, licking around the wood, though it does not appear to be burning. Bailey looks again at the woman to his left, and she winks at him before standing and walking to the center of the circle. Amidst the panic, she calmly unbuttons her coat and removes it, tossing it with a delicate gesture towards the burning chair. What had been a heavy wool coat becomes a long piece of black silk that ripples like water over the chair. The flames vanish. Only a few lingering wisps of smoke remain, along with the sharp smell of charred wood that is slowly changing to the comforting scent of a fireplace, tinged with something like cinnamon or clove. Aww! The woman, standing in the center of the circle of chairs, pulls back the black silk with a flourish, revealing a still intact chair on which now perch several snow-white doves. Another flourish, and a black silk folds and curves in on itself, becoming a black top hat. The woman places it on her head, topping off an ensemble that looks like a ball gown fashioned out of the night sky, black silk dotted with sparkling white crystals. Oh, I want one! She acknowledges her audience with a subtle bow. The illusionist has made her entrance. A few people, including Bailey, manage to applaud, while those who have abandoned their seats return to them, looking both disturbed and curious. The performance is continuous. The displays Bailey has difficulty thinking of as tricks meld one into the other. The doves vanish frequently, only to reappear on hats or under chairs. There's also a black raven, far too large to have been cleverly concealed. It is only after the performance has gone on for some time that Bailey slowly realizes that because of the circle of chairs, the shape, and the closeness of the space, there's no room for mirrors or tricks of the light. Everything is immediate and palpable. She even transforms one audience member's pocket watch from metal to sand and back again. At one point, all the chairs float some distance off the ground, and while the movement is steady and secure, Bailey's toes barely graze the floor, and he clutches the sides of his chair nervously. At the end of the act, the illusionist takes a bow with a pivoting turn, acknowledging the entire circle as the audience applauds. As she completes the rotation, she's no longer there. Only a few sparkling shimmers remain, echoes of the crystals in her gown. The door reappears in the side of the tent, and the small audience makes their way out. Bailey lags behind, glancing back as he leaves at the spot where the illusionist had been. Outside, though it was not there before, is another raised platform, much like the one the contortionist stood on, but the figure on this platform does not move. Bailey almost thinks it is a statue, dressed in a white gown edged with matching fur that cascades beyond the platform to the ground. Her hair and skin, even her eyelashes, are an icy white. But she moves. Very, very slowly. So slowly that Bailey cannot pinpoint exact motions, only slight changes. Soft flakes of iridescent snow float to the ground, falling from her like leaves from a tree. Bailey walks around, looking at her from every angle. Her eyes follow him, though the snow-flecked lashes do not blink. I could not do that. I could not stand still that long. Are you fucking kidding me? Sorry. There's a small silver plaque on the platform, partially obscured by the cascading gown. It reads, "In Memoriam," but it does not specify who it is for. Okay. Until next time.